A global network of diverse experts all working to improve lives through forensic science. This is the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. For 75 years, AAFS has been the premier organization of more than 6,000 members from all 50 states and 71 other countries. This year, we are celebrating 75 years of seeing science work. This is AAFS TV, bringing it all right to you. I'm Andrea Godfrey, and welcome back to Day 3 of the 75th anniversary meeting of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. As thousands from around the globe gather to focus on the latest findings in forensic science and network with their peers, we are highlighting how the Academy is setting the standard. In fact, we take a trip to the National Institute of Standards and Technology headquarters just outside of Washington, D.C. to see how they are making sure their research and development efforts are reaching those inside laboratories. We sit down with the chair of the History Committee to discuss how standards have been developed and implemented throughout the last 75 years. And we continue to highlight the institutions around the world finding new ways to take forensic science to the next level. Plus, open for business. We hit the exhibit hall as it opens to showcase businesses bringing the newest technology and products to the forensic science community. It's an exciting third day of must-see content, and there are plenty of ways for you to watch. You can find the latest episode on our dedicated spot on the AAFS website, in-house channel 137 here at the Shingle Creek Resort, and of course you can always see all of our interviews and clips on our YouTube and Twitter pages. We get started today with a look at the work of the Center for Statistics and Applications in Forensic Evidence, or CSAFE. CSAFE features initiatives in research and training designed to move research into forensic laboratories and courtrooms with a focus on probability and statistics for pattern and digital evidence.
First and foremost, CSAFE is a center of excellence of NIST. CSAFE was created to provide a venue for academic researchers and forensic practitioners to communicate and collaborate, and to develop scientifically sound methods that are reproducible and objective and that can improve forensic practice. The work that forensic practitioners do and the work that we do in the aid of forensic practitioners is critically important for the fair administration of justice. So people's lives are on the line every time they provide testimony in court. Our aim is to develop the statistical and scientific foundations for digital and pattern comparison disciplines. We work on firearms and tool marks, handwriting, footwear impression analysis, blood stain pattern analysis, latent print. The idea is to develop objective, reproducible methods to evaluate evidence in those areas, with a focus, of course, on making sure that whatever it is we work on eventually finds its way into practice.
And as we start today focusing on standards, what better place to begin than at the National Institute of Standards and Technology? We visited their headquarters to sit down with the Forensic Science Standards Program Manager, John Paul Jones II.
Some of the primary goals of the NIST Forensic Science Program are to ultimately transition the work in our standards groups and our research groups into practice, into operational crime laboratories. That's where the real impact occurs, when you change and improve the practice of forensic science laboratories. We have an overall forensic science program at NIST that really studies and dives into 3 different areas. One is the standards component, the second is the research component, and finally the foundations component. We take those 3 components and integrate pieces of them together to actually benefit from each other. So for example, our research component has mechanical engineers and scientists that have been researching 3D microscopy and how that can be applied to firearms analysis, which means the analysis of a bullet or a cartridge case. They've been doing research in this for years, and they have taken that knowledge and helped integrate that information into standards, paper documents that describe how to bring that technology into your laboratory, how to validate that technology. So we have our research folks here collaborating in our standard space, where we work with researchers and the practicing community to produce documents that guide the forensic science community forward. When you develop a new standard, it's very tough to integrate that into the practicing forensic laboratories. So what we try to do is to make standards implementation as easy as possible. We're working with folks like the American Academy of Forensic Sciences, where we have entered into a cooperative agreement with them to help us integrate standards into the laboratories. They produce checklists, which are ways for laboratories to take a standard and see what are the required components of that, or what are the recommended components of that, and check them off as they go through. Also, the Academy is producing training videos. So when we're trying to, again, help people implement standards, the first step there is training them on what they are, why they're important. And we have videos that are produced, webinars, that describe this to the practicing community. And the third thing they're doing is they're producing things called fact sheets for us. And these fact sheets are really critical because they're taking these complicated standards that are written in scientific language and putting them down into more layperson language, so that stakeholders other than scientists can become informed on why these standards are important. So people like judges, lawyers, etc., can read about these standards, understand what they're trying to do, and understand their importance in the entire criminal justice system. So, you know, for us, standards is an exciting opportunity to make a difference, and the Academy is playing an important role of helping us transition our important work into practice.
So that's where we currently stand with regard to standards, but how far have we come? Ronald Singer, past president of AAFS and current chair of the History Committee, joins us now in studio for a little bit of a history lesson. Thanks for your time today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
All right, so as the chair of the History Committee, let's start with the evolution of forensic science. How far have we come in 75 years?
Well, I think we've come very far in 75 years. From the very beginning, I think that there was a slow trend toward moving away from bootstrap type science that you would use in a crime laboratory if you came across something that you hadn't seen before and had to think about what can I do with it, to a much more processed kind of scientific endeavor. And I think that what gave it the best push, of course, was the report of the National Academies of Science in 2009 that pointed out a lot of the flaws or shortcomings of forensic science as it was being practiced at that time. Since then, we've moved very rapidly to try to validate the methodology that we're using, as well as independent research in the field.
You know, today we are focusing a lot on the creation and implementation of standards. You just mentioned the validation of methods. Are we in a good place with that?
I think we're moving toward a good place, yes.
Not there yet.
I don't think, well, in science you're never there yet. But I think for the Academy and for forensic science as a whole, the implementation of standards and best practices and that sort of thing is something that was sorely needed for a long time in many of the disciplines. Some of the forensic disciplines had that all along because they were much more related to scientific processes that were already ongoing in other areas. But much of forensic science is innovative, and that's the areas where standards are going to become very important, validation of methods is going to become very important, and that's where we're moving now.
And you also say that it's very important to recognize limitations.
Oh, absolutely, yes. One of the main issues that has come up in court many times, is error rates, or how sure are you of this? And when I got started 50 years ago in forensic science, much of what we testified to was absolute. We would say that bullet was fired from that gun to the exclusion of all others in the universe. Well, obviously we don't know that. We have never examined all other firearms in the universe. What we were testifying to was a kind of a gut feeling that we had based on what we knew from the science of metallurgy, and I'm using firearms as an example, but there are others as well. And that doesn't cut it anymore in court because attorneys want to know, well, how sure are you? What is the error rate? You know, and if you say it's 100%, you're automatically disqualified because nothing in science is 100%. So yes, there are limitations, and much of the field is kind of slow in recognizing that there are limitations, but I think we're all coming around now.
You've mentioned junk science previously, and how do we make sure that that is kept out of both our laboratories and the courtroom?
Well, that's an interesting question because the way the court system is set up, of course, if you have a novel science that you want to introduce into court, basically the judge listens to testimony about how you approached these results and the scientific basis behind what you're doing, and then decides. And unfortunately, most judges on the courts today are not scientists, of course. They're coming up through the law, which generally means they're liberal arts majors. And so they're really not in a position to understand that. The definition of junk science changes depending on who you talk to, but basically, junk science is something that is introduced into the court that has little or no scientific basis.
Interesting. So one little bit of junk science comes into the courtroom and it undermines everything that's actually factually correct.
Yes, and what happens, of course, is that when it gets approved or in one court and the judge allows it, then that's precedent for another court to allow it, and then before you know it, it becomes an accepted testimony in court, and there's little or no science behind it. And I think the thing that is maybe going to limit that in the future is that defense attorneys are becoming, well, all attorneys, I guess would be the best way to say it, are becoming more savvy about that and are becoming much more literate about what can be done and what can't be done. And you know, there are people out there now who are willing to step forward and say, no, there is no basis for this in court. And so as that progresses, I think what we'll see is that more and more of it will be used less and less.
Good. Wonderful. All right. Well, Ronald, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate this little trip down memory lane.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
The Institute of Forensic Sciences is the government agency responsible for investigating crime scenes, recovering custody, and analyzing evidence of criminal cases that occurred in the jurisdiction of Puerto Rico. Let's take a look at how they are using technology to streamline the work for pathologists.
El Instituto de Ciencias Forenses es una organización científica independiente que provee servicios combinados de Medical Examiner y Laboratorio de Criminalística. La misión del instituto es analizar evidencia que se genera en la comisión de delitos para aclarar controversias judiciales y realizar autopsias para el beneficio y las respuestas que se le puedan dar adecuadamente a los familiares sobre las causas de la muerte de esas personas y para ayudar en los tribunales a resolver también controversias judiciales.
El Instituto de Ciencias Forenses cuenta con la confianza de la comunidad y nuestros científicos están altamente comprometidos con la misión de nuestra agencia. En ese sentido, nuestros esfuerzos van dirigidos a un mejoramiento continuo, a probar nuestras herramientas, nuestros métodos, a introducir nuevas tecnologías que nos permitan tener mayor información y que podamos hacer esa información accesible al sistema de justicia.
When the opioid epidemic began in the late 1990s, it was driven primarily by the overuse of prescription opioids. But since then, we have seen a skyrocketing abuse of synthetic opioids, and with that, an increase in the number of overdose deaths. Joining me now to discuss a little further from the DEA is Agnes Winokur, as well as George Hime from Miami-Dade Medical Examiner's Office. Thank you both for your time this morning. Agnes, let's start with you. How are the efforts going to try to combat this problem? Are we succeeding?
Well, let me give you an indication. In 2022, DEA seized more than 50.6 million fentanyl-laced fake prescription pills and more than 10,000 pounds of fentanyl powder. Now, the DEA laboratory system estimates that this would be potentially more than 379 million potential lethal doses of fentanyl.
So it seems like we're trying to wrap our arms around an ocean here. Is that an accurate description? Does it feel like that sometimes?
Definitely, unfortunately.
So you were recently at the top of the news cycle when the DEA put out a bulletin right around Halloween warning parents about potential fentanyl-laced candy that might end up in Halloween baskets. How much of public perception and public knowledge is a big help to you when it comes to trying to combat this problem?
Public awareness is incredibly important, and it definitely has to be a team effort from all law enforcement, all media. Right now, drug traffickers are using social media platforms such as Facebook and TikTok and Instagram, using codes and emojis to sell these very dangerous drugs. And it's very important that we continue those efforts for public awareness.
George, you were saying that Miami is often ground zero for this effort. What kind of things do you see in your office?
Oh, goodness. I think your timing is right. Around 2009, when the opioid epidemic was kind of coming to an end because of the closure of the pain management clinics, we saw this gigantic wave of new synthetic drugs. It's started out with synthetic versions of cathinone, then synthetic cannabinoids, but then around 2015 we began to see this surge of opioids, namely fentanyl, and it has continued since 2015, which is a fairly long period of time. And what we're seeing is probably in the neighborhood of several hundred deaths. Probably every couple of months we'll get 700 deaths of fentanyl. So it is hitting us dramatically, and I think overall we've seen about 1,800 deaths over the last 5 or 6 years. So it's devastating to our work because these things have to be detected and identified.
You know, the process of establishing and enforcing standards within the forensic science community has been a little bit bumpy, I think you could say, over the last 15 years. How much progress do you think we have made in streamlining the standards process?
Well, I think it's tremendous difference. Very good progress, I would say, since the release of the National Academy of Sciences report in 2008. Lots of changes have taken place, not only just in the standards of our operation, but certification, accreditation of laboratories has increased, and also probably one of the most uplifting things that I see is the number of educational programs, bachelor's degree, master's degree, graduate degrees in forensic science. So there has been a humongous change in standards and quality of work.
Question for both of you. What do you think the biggest obstacle is or the biggest challenge is right now facing the forensic science community?
I think it's that even the form and the type of different synthetics keep changing. I mean, even now you have the emergence of the rainbow fentanyl tablets, which is all comes with the different colors, tablets to try to appeal to the young population. And with that, you get forms changing quite frequently, as well as having new synthetic substances that then we have to try to figure out how to detect and identify and be able to report. I
think in my branch it's funding, continued funding. Governments cannot let up at this point. We need that additional funding. The challenges, the technical challenges, as Agnes said, detecting and seeing things that are changing every day. So those are big challenges that we're trying to meet.
Well, we certainly appreciate the work that both of you are doing, and we appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Keeping the focus on our federal partners now, DC3 serves as the Department of Defense's Center of Excellence for Digital and Multimedia Forensics, Cyber Training, Technical Solutions, Research and Development, Cyber Analytics, and Vulnerability Sharing in support of the DoD and National Defense requirements. Let's take a closer look.
DC3 is a cyber center of excellence for digital and multimedia forensics to the Department of Defense. DC3 not only supports the law enforcement and counterintelligence community, it also supports the cybersecurity community. DC3 is a bridge and really helps support the information sharing and sharing of cyber capabilities to go against cyber threats.
DC3 is unique because of our people. We are composed of a very rich and diverse skill set, experience, and background. Our members come from civilian life, military, law enforcement, and counterintelligence. All of that provides a very rich product that we provide our customers.
What excites me about DC3, especially in the innovative space, is cyber is dynamic, especially within digital forensics, and really working not only within the Department of Defense, but across academia and others to really go after those capabilities and issues that we have against cyber threats.
Well, the doors are finally open and there are hundreds of exhibitors just waiting to show you the very latest technology and products to assist in the world of forensic sciences. Let's see what they've got. Make sure you check out all the exhibit hall has to offer between now and 2 o'clock on Friday. That does it for day 3 here on this 75th anniversary meeting of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences. Remember, if you missed any part of today's episode, you can always catch the very latest from AAFS TV by watching us on channel 137 in your room here at the Shingle Creek Resort, as well as on the homepage of the AAFS website. And as always, we post all of our clips and content on our Twitter and YouTube pages. Remember, we've got one more day ahead here at the 75th Anniversary Conference. We hope to see you tomorrow. Have a great day.